This is the Comics Alternative, episode 199, a look at the August Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the 1st of August, which means that it's time for us to look through the current previews catalog. But before we get into that, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off cover price, and every single month you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off cover, but often you can find discounts that are more impressive than that.
That's right, and because this is our previews episode, you can count on the fact that many of the things we talk about will be discounted and on sale at DCB Service in the month of August.
That's right. They got tons of specials. You got to go to the website and find out what they are for this month. That's dcbservice.com. You got to go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Well, you know, Andy, last week we announced to everyone that we're about to have our 4-year anniversary. And as of this episode, we have been podcasting for 4 years now.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. You know, as we mentioned last week, for me at least, it seems like a long time, but on the other hand, it's like, wow, 4 years just went by quickly. But we have done a lot of episodes, and this is interesting. For those listening at home who follow our numbering, you'll notice that this episode, and we number the weekly episodes, the regular weekly episodes that we started doing way back in 2012. We don't really number the other shows, or at least overtly. I have a coding where I number them. But we call, you know, each of the regular review episodes we number. And this one is at 199.
Wow, it's too bad we couldn't have them coincide with 4-year anniversary and 200th episode. Now we have to do 2 double-sized episodes in a row.
That's right. So next week we'll be celebrating our 200th regular review show. So, but yeah, there's a lot. So, you know, we've been around a long time. 200 episodes, people could say, you know, there are a lot of podcasts that are out that have been out less time but have more episodes than that. But, you know, I was doing some counting, and not counting 2 episodes over the past several months that have been announcements. I'm talking about regular episodes, review, monthly interviews, what have you. There's a total so far of 420.
Wow.
So like I said, with this episode, it's 199th regular review show, the ones that go up weekly on Wednesday. But in total, we have 420.
Man.
That's a lot. And
so when are we going to start over at number 1?
Relaunch, reboot. We'll take the Marvel low road and start doing things that way. But no, actually, and of those 420 episodes, 95 of them are interview shows since we started numbering the interview shows separately from our weekly rotation back in November 2013.
Now that surprises me because I feel like we've done more interview shows than 95.
Well, if you add within our first year,
right.
If you remember, we had the interviews as part of our weekly rotation,
right.
And we decided not to do that after the first year. So I don't know how many were in that first year, but it's 95 plus however many those are. It does feel like we've done a lot, and I think one of the reasons for it feeling like we do a lot of interviews is over the past year we really have upped our game in terms of interviews. We've done more than we had in the past.
Right.
Yep. So a lot of episodes and 4 years of podcasting. And in fact, we did get a congratulatory email from someone who wanted to wish us well on our 4 years. And in fact, this is someone, I don't remember him contacting us before. His name is Joe Nolan. And he really wrote a nice email to us, and we should share it with our listeners. He says, "Hi, just writing to wish you all a happy birthday and a hearty congratulations on producing 4 years' worth of constantly excellent podcasts. I squeal with excitement every time my iTunes updates with a new episode, and given your prodigious output, that's a whole lot of squealing. So, hey, we make people squeal."
Wow.
Yeah. "While I have been a subscriber since the beginning," ooh, that's impressive, "I must admit to not achieving Iron Man status by listening to every episode, foolishly only engaging in topics with which I was already familiar. However, my New Year's resolution for 2016 was to listen to every single podcast put out by the Comics Alternative." Now, that's impressive to be a part of someone's New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wraps up by saying, "In doing so, I have opened myself up to a wealth of new material, manga, young reader books, Euro comics, and a bounty of American comic creators I just didn't know. So I thank you for the dozens or so podcasts released each week, and for the new mind space you all open up by exposing me to new works. Keep up the great work, and congratulations, Joe Nolan." And then there's a P.S. "My one request is for more horror-related comics. The interview with Josh Simmons was a highlight for me. The furry trap still gives me nightmares."
Good. Well, I think we are going to meet that promise, I believe, or that request, I should say, because we do have a couple episodes coming up horror-related.
That's right. And, within the past week, this is the second message that we've gotten with someone requesting that we focus more on horror. Another listener to the show, Tristan Laurie, last week contacted us on Facebook and said, "Can you do more horror?" So maybe we should give the people what they want.
Yeah.
But for this week, we're going to give the people a rundown of upcoming comics that are listed in the August previews catalog, things that we can look forward to, and some of those are going to be horror-related, especially since the vast majority of the comics we're going to be mentioning today in the catalog are slotted for October, just in time for Halloween.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to apologize in advance that this is probably going to be on the long end of even a normal previews episode for me anyway.
Okay, cool.
As I got a lot of stuff.
I don't know if I have a lot. I start off the first couple of sections. I don't have as many for, let's say, a couple of publishers as I usually do. But we often say that we may not have that much, and then the show turns into a 2-hour some marathon. So let's see what we have here. So if we start in Dark Horse, what is a highlight of yours?
I start on page 46, so if you have anything before then, go ahead.
No.
Okay, so on page 46 is Bait by Chuck Palahniuk, which is advertised here as off-color stories for you to color. So it's a book of short stories by Chuck Palahniuk, but it is, I guess, designed for the adult coloring book market. It has art by Duncan Fegredo, Lee Bermeo, Mark Sheff, Steve Morris, Joel Jones, Tony Perrier, and several others. So, and it's 128 pages, so that's a lot of coloring to do.
Yeah, it is. Have you done any coloring books, I guess recent coloring books, adult or otherwise?
No, I have some. Some have been given to me as gifts, but I've given some away as gifts, but I haven't gotten into that trend yet. Now with this book, most of the ones I've seen, though, especially comic-related ones, are just covers, like duplicating covers. Like I have a Deadpool one, for example, that someone gave me, and it's just a bunch of different Deadpool covers and pinups. to color, but this is one. I mean, I've seen this sort of thing like bait before, but where it's actual stories for you to color. Now, when I was a kid, we called those black and white comics. Not adult color books, but I guess the different generations.
Yeah, these kids today with their Crayolas.
Or colored pencils, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of them are using. But anyway, yeah, I mean, because I think that's interesting. That's an interesting idea. I guess I could go back and and color in all my old issues of Love and Rockets.
Oh, I'm sure that would be a really smart thing to do.
Those adult coloring books, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, But I guess no. This is for us to color.
Yeah. Well, I ask about the coloring book because I know my wife last year started to do that semi-regularly. In fact, I can't remember her picking it up recently, but for a while there she had coloring books, adult coloring books, and not the comic variety. And she found it relaxing, as some people say that they do. And she has had a variety of different ones. So I'm wondering, though, you're right, with a lot of the ones that have been published by comics publishers, more times than not, they seem to be covers. And I know that, Craig Yo did one not too long ago, earlier this year, in fact. And I think those were covers. So this would be interesting to see if now, are these original stories?
It looks either they're original stories or they're adapted from Palahniuk's own short stories. I'm not sure if it specifies. But anyway.
And on the next page, there are two Star Trek and one Buffy the Vampire Slayer adult coloring book.
Yeah, those are good. Those are interesting. Those would make good presents for people I know. I know the ones I've gotten for people include the Benedict Cumberbatch coloring book, the Sherlock coloring book, and the Tom Hiddleston coloring book.
Yeah, I got the Sherlock one for Amanda. So.
Yeah.
Because she's a big fan of Sherlock and especially Cumberbatch.
Yeah, so there's a separate Benedict Cumberbatch one if you want to find that one. If you need another present.
Well, maybe that's the one I got her.
There's because we got two of them. I mean, we got the Sherlock one also. So
okay, I can't remember which one I got for her now, but I know that it had it had Cumberbatch in it.
Mm-hmm. It was Cumberbatchy.
It was Cumberbatchy. Okay, so where do you go after the bait?
And then I go to 48, which is a new miniseries.
Yep.
From Dark Horse called Spell on Wheels, written by Kate Leth, whose work I've liked, including most recently on Patsy Walker Hellcat for Marvel, with art by Megan Levins. Coloring by Marissa Louise, and covers by Ming Doyle. So, and the description says 3 young witches are robbed of their magical items, and they'll have to hit the road to track down the mysterious thief before he does any damage to or with their possessions. So that seems like a pretty straightforward description.
Yeah, that one looks really good. And in fact, we've discussed Kate Leth in the past. It was last year when we did the Retrofit Big Planet publisher spotlight. So yeah, this looks really interesting. They describe this as Supernatural meets Buffy and the Craft. So I guess that gives you kind of a twist to it, a feel. I wanted to highlight this one as well. I don't know if this is something that I will read, but it does seem like, because I have enough to read as it is, and ideally it would be great to add this to the list, but would I get around to it? I don't know. Nonetheless, it's something that our listeners, I'm sure, would find really interesting, and a good sample art here too.
Yeah,
on the next page.
And I like the idea of this sort of quest story. Especially involving magic. It reminds me a bit of, like, for example, the first arc of Sandman or some of the Hellblazer stories where Constantine will get, some of his magic objects will be stolen and he'll have to go get them, or Sandman in that first has to recollect these magic objects of his that have been stolen from him while he was captured. And I think that sets up a nice structure for a comic miniseries to have. So I think that'll be an interesting concept there or plot to follow. And it's got so it'll be like a kind of road movie with witches.
Road movie with witches. And This is 1 of 5, so this would be something that I think would be nice to read collected. I mean, individually, I guess, but... And also I'm wondering, given the focus, if the intended audience may be a little younger, because I was thinking it may be something that Andy and Gwen can look at in their Young Reader series.
Possibly,
yeah. So there you go. Plus, it is a Diamond Gem of the Month. And now that after you've highlighted this, for the rest of the day, I will have Paul McCartney's Hell on Wheels on my mind.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's a fun song. And an underrated McCartney song in my book. Yep.
I skipped to 54 next, so if you have anything before then, go ahead.
I wanted to mention on page 50, we have a new Chimichanga series, Eric Powell's Chimichanga. So this is issue number 1 of 4, Chimichanga, The Sorrow of the World's Worst Face. And so if you like Eric Powell, or if you specifically like that first run on the Chimichanga story, with the wrinkles, traveling circus, bearded girl, then hey, she's back.
And this has art by Stephanie Buscema.
Right.
And I like her art. It looks really nice.
And again, we have another page of sample art. Now, one of the things I'm wondering about is we have seen Powell publish more over the past several months through his Albatross self-publishing title. And for instance, he has Hillbilly there now. But I'm wondering, why not bring this new Chimichanga through his own publishing line? Unless Dark Horse, he just feels that they have much more reach.
Yeah, well, some work better at different publishers.
True. But then why not bring, I wonder, Hillbilly through Dark Horse?
Yeah. Well, again.
Different things work for different... Okay, so yeah, in Dark Horse, I don't have anything until 73. But so you say you go where?
To 54.
Okay.
Because we've got this, in the wake of Muhammad Ali's recent death, Dark Horse is reprinting a French graphic novel for the first time in English, a biography of Muhammad Ali, and I'm gonna butcher the French name, so I'm not even gonna try. But
Sibyl Titu.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
An amazing Amesian. I don't know. Anyway, and so I'm curious about that, especially because it's pretty well known in France as a biography, and I think it's about time it came to the U.S.
So this is the first English translation.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Huh. Now I'm wondering if this was something that was already slotted. It would seem to be that way, and then Ali died.
Yeah,
and then they may have stepped up the production afterwards. Who knows?
Possibly.
But yeah, that's something worth checking out. I looked at that, but for some weird reason, I did not mark that in my notes.
Okay.
So do you have anything else in Dark Horse before 73?
I don't have anything else in Dark Horse, so go ahead.
At all. Okay, so I go, let me get there. And both of us are reading from PDF, so I can't just flip a page quickly and easily. I'm scrolling through this PDF. So on page 73, we have the next volume in the EC Archives, which as we know now, Dark Horse has, and this is volume 2 of Crime Suspense Stories. Now, when I saw this, I couldn't help but think, okay, this is one of those volumes that Gemstone or GC Press published originally, and then Dark Horse is just putting out a new edition of it, because this is Crime Suspense Stories after all. They have to have, be at least on volume 3. But no, there's only been one volume in the EC Archives, the recent incarnation of EC Archives of Crime Suspense Stories. So this is the second. So this is not a reprint of something that Gemstone did. So here we go. If you keep up with these, then volume 2, Crime Suspense Stories.
So the Matt Kint foreword that's advertised on here is new to the Dark Horse edition.
To this one, I mean, this is not Dark. This is Dark Horse doing this for the first time,
right.
So not they're not doing anything that Gemstone or GC had done previously several years before. But yeah, this is new.
Okay,
so that's interesting. And then with that, I finish up Dark Horse.
Yeah, and then I just have a couple things in DC.
DC/Vertigo, or DC and then Vertigo separate?
DC and then Vertigo, okay. Specifically kind of continuing our conversation about the Young Animal line that Gerard Way is editing. We get the next 2 entries in that. Cave Carson Has a Cybernetic Eye, number 1, by Gerard Way, written by Gerard Way and John Rivera, and drawn by Michael Avon-Aiming. And then following that is Shade the Changing Girl, written by Cecil Castellucci and drawn by Marley Zarcone. Right. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this Young Animal line rolls out, because I think these could be this could be an exciting new venture for DC.
Yeah, I do too. And by the way, those are on pages 80 and 81 that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Cave Carson Has a Cybernetic Eye, interesting title, and then Shade the Changing Girl. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get these as well. Now, this is interesting. Since our last episode, I finally finished up and put in my July order for Discount Comic Book Service, kind of late as usual. But one of the things I noticed when I was ordering the new Doom Patrol that we mentioned last month, that on the DCB Service ordering form, the new Doom Patrol was listed along with Vertigo titles. And so I'm wondering if the same thing will be with these 2 titles being part of DC's Young Animal. And one of the things we mentioned last month is that the Young Animal seems to be like a new Vertigo, even though they're not calling it Vertigo.
Right.
But apparently the people who put together the order form that we get from DCB Service see more of a connection than at least we're letting on.
Yeah.
Or that the publisher's letting on. But yeah, I think both of those titles are definitely worth checking out. Now that's all I have in DC before we get to Vertigo.
Right, me too.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure you start about the same place I do in Vertigo. Yeah,
and I'm on page 141. And basically all I did want to mention is that friend of the show, Tim Seeley, is going to be writing a Lost Boys ongoing series. So Tim does that horror stuff really well, so good luck to Tim and everybody else with that series. I don't have a lot of connection to Lost Boys. Nostalgically, I think I'm kind of a little bit out of the generation that was really into Lost Boys, much as I'm out of the generation that was into like the Goonies and Karate Kid. Those are some pop culture touchstones that don't have a lot of meaning for me.
Yeah.
So, but there's this was a pretty significant movie for a lot of people in the kind of generation below me. So I hope that this catches on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I've seen Lost Boys a few times. I know about it, but like some of those other movies you mentioned, it doesn't really ring with me in a way that it may resonate with people younger than we are. But I'd much rather have a connection to Lost Boys, I tell you, than the Goonies. I just do not like the Goonies, but they're always a butt of jokes in our household, and not just with me, but with Amanda as well. But yeah, the Lost Boys. We should mention that this is not a retelling of the film Lost Boys. This is basically picking up where the film left off.
Right.
So we have in the solicit a description of basically where the movie left off. So if you're not familiar with the film, you can get a sense of what's going on here. Yeah, we've seen over the past few years many comics that allude to in one way or another either adapt or pick up where the original film left off, 80s films. And it's gotten to the point that I almost don't notice them anymore. There are just so many of them. But as you pointed out, the fact that Tim Seeley is the writer of this series, and he does really well with this type of story, with this genre of writing, it would make it worth checking out. Yeah. So do you have anything else in Vertigo? Because I have just one other thing. Okay, go ahead. I'm done in Vertigo. Yeah, and this is on page 147. This is the next in Vertigo's Deluxe Edition line, The Unwritten. Deluxe Edition, Book 1. And I've talked about the Vertigo Deluxe Editions several times before on the show. I really like them. And there's some of these that, even if I've gotten the individual comics, and especially if I don't get the trades, then I'll make sure that I get the deluxe edition. And a great example of that is 100 Bullets. I mean, I think I may have gotten one trade of 100 Bullets, but I got all the single issues. But that's such a significant series for me that I wanted to get the deluxe edition. Fables, that's another example. And I think almost every deluxe edition that Vertigo comes out with, I'm on board for. Definitely the Unwritten. And I knew they were going to do it. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I figured this would be one that they would come out with too. I have all the single issues, so this is not a series I feel the need to double dip on.
Yeah, I'll do this one. But the last deluxe edition that Vertigo started, and I guess they're in the middle of now, is Sweet Tooth, and that was one. I don't know about you, but I was a little surprised when I learned that was one that they were putting out in the deluxe edition. It just didn't. I just didn't consider it, and that's why it hit me by surprise. But that's not one. I mean, I like that series, but it's not one that I would have gone to get any of the deluxe editions of. But I have the single issues.
Right.
But Unwritten, definitely. So if you have nothing else in Vertigo DC, then let's head on over to IDW.
Right. And I don't have anything in IDW to 172, so if you have anything before then, go ahead.
Okay. These are titles that I don't know if I'm necessarily going to get, but I think they're worth mentioning. On page 163 is a new Star Trek series. This is Star Trek Boldly Go #1, and this is basically picking up where the new film Star Trek Beyond leaves off. So it's really good to see that they're coordinating all this really well, which they did with the last Star Trek movie, so this doesn't surprise me. But if you're a Star Trek fan in general, if you like Star Trek in comic book form, then something else to look forward to. And another example of televised or cinematic media in comic book form comes on page 169. And this is a new Dirk Gently title. This is Dirk Gently, The Salmon of Doubt, issue #1. And also on that same page, 169, there is a collection, Dirk Gently's big holistic graphic novel, which includes the first 2 narrative arcs of Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency. So, I spoke a couple of months ago with Arvind Ethan David, and he had mentioned something about this new series that would be out soon. And this is notable not only because I found that the Dirk Gently comics are really fun. Nothing heavy, just, great to pick up, good stories. But, they're doing that new BBC series, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a series of books I never really got into. I think there were only two, right?
Two, yeah.
That Douglas Adams ended up doing. And I think I read the first and started the second, but never finished it. So, yeah, I haven't followed Dirk Gently in any of its other iterations.
Yeah. So, yeah, this new series, The Salmon of Doubt, looks interesting, and just around the time that we're going to get the new BBC series, starring, among other people, Elijah Wood. So you say, where do you go in IDW?
Then to 172.
Oh, yes. And it almost seems like a deja vu from last month.
Yeah. So we get a new Tom Tomorrow book, but this one's a massive 1,000-page collection, Tom Tomorrow, 25 Years of Tomorrow, which is a hardcover in a slipcase for $125. But if you like Tom Tomorrow's This Modern World, then this would be a handy volume to get.
Mm-hmm. Expensive, but it's something I definitely would like to get. Mm-hmm. Don't know if I can afford, but I'm not going to get this, but it is worth noting that on page 174 we have a new artist edition. This is Alex Toth's Bravo for Adventure. Mm-hmm. And it was last year that IDW put out Toth's Bravo for Adventure, and we had Dean Mullaney on the show to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this would be an interesting book to do the artist edition for, because I think the showcase really is the art. This story I wasn't really blown away with as much as I was with the art.
Right.
So it's a good book to look at.
Mm-hmm. Although, with the price, they indicate, please inquire. I can't afford it. Mm-hmm.
If you have to ask,
that's right.
You can't afford it.
And if we turn the page, 175, we have the first of a 4-issue miniseries, The Electric Sublime. This is written by W. Maxwell Prince with art by Martin Morazzo. And this, it looks interesting. I'm not familiar with W. Maxwell Prince's work. Are you?
No, I'm not familiar with either of these creators, but I was struck by the small sample art pages that we got in the cover.
Right.
Enough to think about this as a possibility.
Yeah, it says, welcome to the Electric Sublime, where art history, madness, and expression meet in Pollock's splatter of thrilling crime adventure, when a mysterious change in the composition of a famous painting begins poisoning the minds of its spectators. Margot Bresland, director of the Bureau of Artistic Integrity, must pull famed art detective Arthur Brute out of a mental institution and back into the insanity that sent him there in the first place. It sounds like a very interesting premise. You're right, the art is also alluring. But you know what this reminds me of in some way?
Art Ops?
Yes.
Yeah.
By saying that, I am not making any kind of accusation that, one was inspired or, alludes to the other. I mean, two different things, but it just reminds me a little bit of that, because it's not often that you have in a comic book series something dealing with mystery and high art.
Yeah, but I almost get the feeling from reading this description that this is more of what I wish Art Ops had been. Because other than in that first issue, with Mona Lisa kind of coming out of the painting, I didn't feel like there was enough of the kind of art investigation side of that thing, especially because the Art Ops team disappears right away, and most of that series was spent trying to find them again, and it wasn't dealing as much with actual art, whereas this seems to be more involved with the art, especially when looking at the sample pages.
Yeah. Now, I am behind on my Art Ops. Has that series ended?
It was solicited to end either this month or last month. I can't remember. But it has been canceled.
Oh well. Well, maybe this is one we can talk on a future episode. The Electric Sublime.
Mm-hmm.
Where else do you go in IDW?
I jumped to Yo Books. So if you have anything before we get to 188.
Yeah. I noted a couple things in Yo Books, but I think it's worth mentioning on page 178, we have a new edition of Richard Stark's Parker, The Outfit. And so this is a new edition, and one of the things that makes this notable is that in this edition, they're going to be including the story that kind of sets up the outfit, The Man with the Getaway Face.
Yeah, no, my copy of the outfit is still packed away. I thought The Man with the Getaway Face was already in that, in the original.
I don't know. I can't remember. Because I was looking for my copy. I can find Slayland, but I can't find the Outfit or the Hunter. I don't know where to put them. But this one, it says expanded edition. I'm reading from the catalog, featuring The Man with the Getaway Face. So I thought that before, Man with the Getaway Face was only available as a separate issue.
Yeah, see, I do have that, but I may be wrong about that. I'll have to look, but it's in a box somewhere, and I have a feeling I know where that box is, but I'm not gonna interrupt the show to go dig it out. leave you alone to entertain the audience.
We can play organ music in the background. We'll be right back. Kids, don't go away. Okay, so now we get to Yo Books, and there are a couple things worth noting in Yo Books. I think one is perhaps more notable than the other, although that's not to take away from the quality of the less notable one. But there's a reason why the notable one is notable.
Yeah, well, so on page 188 is the second volume of The Complete Voodoo. That's good because with an introduction by Mike Howlett, who has done some work with Craig Yo, and I like these reprints of pre-code horror comics that Yo Books does. So
yeah,
I'm happy to see that series of reprints continuing. But I think you're right that the book that's on page 189 is the exciting book.
Super Weird Heroes.
And now we've gotten a lot of these sorts of things. There was the League of Regrettable Heroes, for example.
Yeah, by John Morris. That was great.
By John Morris. Which was more of like kind of an informative book. This is going to be reprints, and it's going to be massive. It's 500 pages. It's described as a brick filled with tons of rare, full color, never before reprinted comics. I think that's interesting that it says never before reprinted because it includes among the creators Fletcher Hanks.
Right.
And I thought we had gotten pretty much all of Fletcher Hanks' works in the 2 volumes.
Fantagraphics.
From Fantagraphics several years ago, but maybe there'll be new stuff. But if you look at the artists that are represented here, including Hanks, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, John Buscema, Bill Everett, George Tuska, L.B. Cole, Jim Mooney, Mort Meskin, Will Eisner, and more. So just along with the artists, those are all artists and writers and artists, I guess, including Jerry Siegel, that I like anyway. And we get to see their work on some superheroes that have been largely forgotten, like Kangaroo Man, Kismet the Man of Fate, The Ferret, Rainbow Boy, Nature Boy, and The Hand. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. In fact, it's too bad that John Morris's book, League of Regrettable Superheroes, wasn't published by IDW, because then they could package those 2 books together so they could re-release League of Regrettable Superheroes along with Super Weird Heroes, because it seems like it would be a great companion piece, because many of the heroes that we see here on the cover, I think Kangaroo Man, definitely Rainbow Boy, Nature Boy, are also in the League of Regrettable Superheroes. So, this is really notable in that it provides another opportunity for us to have Craig back on the show. Last time he was on, and I'm not counting Heroes Con, but when we spoke with him briefly, is the very first show of the year because we wanted to, say Happy New Yo as we did the year before. So we had an interview with him. It was Gene and I think, who did that one. And The Complete Voodoo Book 1 was one of those books that had just come out that we talked with him about. So there are other Yo books that are going to be coming out soon, especially Super Weird Heroes. This is a great opportunity to get him on the show. Yeah. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I was talking with him at Heroes Con, and Tom Heinchins and I, because they had tables right next to each other, were talking about the title for this book. If I remember correctly, and Craig was asking us what we thought might be a good title for this book of superheroes. And I can't remember the details of that conversation, but apparently he decided on Super Weird Heroes.
Yeah.
So, super something to look forward to.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm done with IDW there. So I go to Image next, unless you have more in IDW.
Nope. On to Image.
Okay. So you want to start?
Yeah, I guess that's the first page here of solicits. This is Moonshine #1. This is bringing back the team of Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Riso, the people who brought us the aforementioned 100 Bullets. But this is the first time that they're teaming up for an Image title. This is Moonshine #1. So it's set in Prohibition. It's in the deep backwoods of Appalachia. It says it's the story of Lou Prillo, a city slick torpedo sent from New York City to negotiate a deal with the best moonshiner in West Virginia, one Hiram Holt. What Lou doesn't figure on is that Holt is just as cunning and ruthless as any New York City crime boss, because not only will Holt do anything to protect his illicit booze operation, he'll stop at nothing to protect a much darker family secret, a bloody supernatural secret that must never see the light of day, or better still, the light of the full moon. Yeah, so in this solicit, if you didn't read the very last line, you, I think, could just assume that this is another 100 Bullets type narrative set during Prohibition. But it's
another crime story.
Exactly. So nothing new there outside of the temporal setting. But that last statement about the supernatural secret adds a twist.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on the fence about this, so I'll see if it turns out to be good. Especially the addition of the werewolf at the end. I was more interested in it as Azzarello and Riso taking on a Prohibition era crime story. I don't know about the werewolf part. Yeah,
I'm the same way. In fact, when you asked me if I wanted to start, I said, well, I guess. And one of the reasons why I said this, because I feel so-so about this. When I first saw the solicit, or at least the first part of it, before I got to that last statement, I thought, okay, well, this would be interesting, because I was a big fan of the HBO series Boardwalk Empire.
Right.
And I thought, oh, great, you get this team together in a Boardwalk Empire kind of time setting. That would be wonderful. But then there's the supernatural part. Okay, I'll try it. I'll see what that's all about. And then another thing, I guess I feel mixed in that on the one hand, I know that Brian Azzarello, along with Eduardo Riso, they do crime comics really well. On the other hand, it seems like most of the stuff we get from Azzarello is crime comics. And, it's either that or something like a superhero project like Wonder Woman. And so, we just recently got American Monster. So is this going to be just another in a series of crime comics from Azzarello? He does them really well. Maybe with the werewolf element here, it'll be something noticeably, tangibly different. But I'll give it a try.
That's the only #1 of the new Image stuff that I had noted. Is there Are there others that stood out to you?
Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention Reborn #1, written by Mark Millar.
Yeah. I like Greg Capullo, who's the artist on it. I like what he did on Batman. He really, really nailed it. And I actually like his art a lot better now than when he was drawing in the more kind of Image style back when Image was a different company than it is now. Yeah, I've been off of Mark Millar for a while, so.
I know. Now, this is on page 196, the solicit for Reborn #1. And the premise does sound interesting. It says, where do you go when you die? Not heaven or hell, somewhere else. Somewhere you have to fight for survival. Somewhere the people from the past are waiting for you, the good and the bad. It's an interesting setup. Will it be any good? I don't know. I think the last several things that Miller has done, these miniseries for Image, have been pretty good. The Chrononauts, Huck, MPH. So this is another one that I'll give a try to.
Okay.
I'm less jaded about Miller than you are.
Right.
Now, the next #1 that apparently didn't catch your attention either is on page 198, and this is Cannibal #1.
Mm-hmm.
This is written by Brian Buccellato and Jennifer Young, with art by Matthias Bergera. It seems interesting, but when reading the solicit, I couldn't help but think Walking Dead. So basically you have some kind of virus where people become cannibals.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they do to save the people who, have become subjected to this virus? It could be good. I don't know. It just, again, kind of like Moonshine, I look at this and on the one hand I feel potential. On the other hand, I'm wondering, is this going to be kind of a retread of something that we're already getting or have already gotten?
Mm-hmm. I didn't initially think of Walking Dead any more than I thought of any other kind of thing. It just struck. It was, I've said recently on the show that, I'm kind of burned out on apocalyptic narratives, and it feels like here's another. This cannibal pandemic. Is another example of that. It may be different from some other things we've seen, but because it's not strictly zombies. But for a book that is in that subgenre, it really has to be, get good word of mouth before I'll indulge in it.
Right. So where else do you go in Image?
I jump to 188.
Okay. 188?
No, wait. What am I doing? 239. Sorry, 239.
Okay. Well,
I was looking at IDW. So
okay, I have a couple things before that. One, and I'm not going to get this because I'm wondering how they're going to do this, but it's worth mentioning anyhow. On page 204, Blacklight District. This is going to be, I guess, one of 6 issues. That's just a one-shot. Are you familiar with the webcomics / music site Blacklight District?
No.
Okay. It's their comics and the text. I know a little bit about them. The text in the comics are basically the lyrics of the music that is also available online. So you can read through the comics by listening to the music, and then you have the lyrics there. How they're going to translate this into a static single-issue comic, I have no idea. But I'd be interested to see how they're going to translate this, I guess you could call it a multimedia webcomic, into single issues.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then on 234, because you say you go to page what now?
239.
Oh, 239. Okay, on 234 is something, again, this is something I've been waiting for, kind of like the deluxe edition of The Unwritten. I knew they were going to do it, it's just a matter of when. Same thing here. This is Alex plus Ada, the Complete Collection Deluxe Edition.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that series, and had started to get the individual issues. I never got any of the trades because I just assumed that they would come out with a complete collection. And so now we have that. So this is on page 234. Did you like Alex and Ada?
I didn't read it.
Okay.
I'm not really a follower of the Luna Brothers.
Okay. Yeah, I like a lot of the things that they do. But this is definitely it is a thought-provoking, high-concept title. So if you missed out on Alex and Ada, then you can get the story in this complete collection deluxe edition. And that's what it's solicited as, the complete collection deluxe edition. So they couldn't just call it Alex and Ada, the complete collection, or Alex and Ada, the deluxe edition. That following page is something I wasn't familiar with. This is Ancestor. It says trade paperback, so I guess an original graphic novel. I don't remember seeing this elsewhere. This is by Matt Sheehan, written by Matt Sheehan with art by Malachi Ward. Now, Malachi Ward, I'm familiar with his work, and he does really good stuff. But I don't know the work of Sheehan. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So for the Ward, yes, I would check out, definitely. Okay, so you're 239. Okay.
Just mentioning, since we had Rich Tomaso on recently, that the first 4 issues of She-Wolf are going to be collected in November in Volume 1, so that is worth checking out.
And it just, God, I mean, time does fly. We had him on just last month talking about issue number 1 of She-Wolf. Now the first trade is solicited. And I'm hoping that he has enough interest to where there will be another 4-issue story arc, because as he told us, that's the strategy he's using for She-Wolf, which is different from Dark Corridor.
Right.
Another bit of good news, I don't know if you heard, is that issue number 1 of She-Wolf went into a second printing.
Right.
So that's good. Do you have anything else in Image?
I wanted to mention on 241 the Thought Bubble anthology.
Right. Yeah.
This is commemorating 10 years of the Thought Bubble Festival, which takes place in Leeds in northern England. Usually, this collection features short stories and art by way too many creators to mention, and a lot of really great British and American and international creators. So, so many, in fact, that when I look at the page count of 136, I just wonder how short these short stories are going to be.
Yeah. Now, had you been getting the Thought Bubble collections every year in like newspaper form?
No.
In tabloid form? Yeah, there's some really interesting things there, and I'm glad that they're coming out now with this book collection, this anthology. Although with that page count, 136 pages, I'm wondering, what they're going to be cutting out, because that can't be everything.
Right.
So, my last mention in the Image section is on that following page, 242, and this is another larger, nice deluxe type edition. This is Plutona limited edition hardcover. So this collects Plutona issues 1 through 5. We discussed issue number 1 on the show. And I think at the time we assumed that this was going to be ongoing. But then after the second or third issue, I guess, maybe after the second, they announced that it was going to be limited.
Yep.
But I wonder if this is one of those instances where they knew it was going to be limited from the beginning, but they didn't mention that fact at the outset. So if you want your Plutona, which I think the trade... Is it out now, or was it just recently announced? It hadn't been that long.
I think it's out.
Okay, so, but again, it hadn't been that long. Now we have the limited hardcover edition.
Okay. Then that takes me to the end of Image. Are you done?
I am done.
And then we go on then to the back half of the catalog. Now, I don't have anything until page 254, so if you have anything before then.
No, we probably have the same thing on 254.
Yeah, Abrams Comic Arts is releasing Cy Lewin's Parade, an Artist's Odyssey by Cy Lewin, with edited and with an introduction by Art Spiegelman. And this is one of the examples of Art Spiegelman kind of resurrecting a little-known property. In this case, Cy Lewin's Parade, which was a wordless illustrated novel from 1957. So these, the handful of wordless illustrated novels that have existed in publishing history are often considered kind of proto-graphic novels or precursors to the graphic novel. So I'm always interested in when one of these historical artifacts is dug up by a creator, and Spiegelman is one of those who does this. Mm-hmm.
And this is not the first time that he has curated or edited one of these wordless narratives, right? Because it was a few years ago. Was it Library of America that had a volume on wordless?
Did it do? Oh crap! What's the guy's name? It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember now. But yeah, you're right.
Okay. So this is something that he's definitely passionate about, and coming from Abrams Comic Arts, it's going to be a good package.
Yeah, and its trade size is 11 by 8. It's 148 pages, and it retails for $40 in hardcover, I guess. So that's actually a pretty hefty price for that.
And then after that, I don't have anything until Aftershock.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is on page 260, issue number 1 of Shipwreck. This is written by Warren Ellis with art by Phil Hester. So this is again another feather in the cap of Aftershock, another major creator, a couple of major creators who are coming together here for this series. From the solicit, it says, Dr. Jonathan Shipwright, sole survivor of a very unusual and very secret shipwreck, doesn't know where he is, seemingly trapped on an endless road in pursuit of a saboteur who holds the key to his salvation or doom. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting setup.
Yep.
And the fact that it's Warren Ellis, I will definitely check this out. Of course, I've been getting all the first issues from Aftershock. They're doing some really interesting things this year.
Yeah.
As we have discussed in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like not a month passes where we do not have a new series, a new number 1 from Aftershock.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, and I think that's probably going to be pretty standard, especially as some of those miniseries end.
Right.
Then I go to 268 next.
Okay, I do too. So what there interests you?
I don't know what everything on this page. There's under Albatross Funnybooks, which you mentioned, which is Eric Powell's imprint or Eric Powell's self-publishing venue. He has a new series called Spook House, which is identified as kid-friendly, scary stories for kids. Which it's not kid-friendly and Eric Powell are not necessarily two things that get said in the same sentences, except that to say something like, Satan's sodomy baby is not kid friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope there are some kids who, and this is the the imp of the perverse in me saying, I hope some kids read Spook House and go, I want some more of this Eric Powell stuff, and then they pick up the Goon or Hillbilly or, God forbid, Satan's sodomy baby.
Yeah. Well, picking up the goon is one thing. Coming across an issue of Satan's Sodomy Baby. Oh, boy. But no, this is interesting. As I said before, I really like Eric Powell's work. The fact that this is coming out in time for Halloween makes it interesting. And the kid-friendly stamp has me wondering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'll be getting that.
Yeah, same here. But then also there are other things on that page, most of which are listed under alternative comics.
Yeah, there seems to be a ton of stuff in there. Cowboys and Insects, one shot by David Hine and Shaky Kane, who did Bulletproof Coffin for Image. Mm-hmm. And so I like that team up, and the cover looks fascinating with some ant-headed cowboys. And it takes place in an alternative 1950s, where the nuclear tests at the Bikini Atoll have had an unexpected effect on North America's insects. So that's a one shot that looks interesting.
And then right under there is something that I'm really fascinated by, and this is Johnny Appleseed. This is written by Paul Buell and art by Noah Van Sciver.
Yeah.
We've talked to Noah on the show before. We've liked and discussed many of his comics. It's a rarity that Paul Buell's name comes up, but he's someone who has a big hand in comics, and including doing these historical biographical narratives. And so it's good to see him teaming up with Noah Van Sciver for the Johnny Appleseed legend.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to this. Now, the book under that is something that came out earlier this year, because this is something that Andy Wolverton and I discussed when we did that really long, big show back in the spring on alternative comics and the others in their co-op. But this is a good book. John Allen's Ohio is for Sale. So this is not a brand new book, but it is definitely worth checking out. And then the one underneath that, do you know about this?
No.
Elijah Brubaker's Reich?
No, but I'm definitely going to be getting it.
Okay. This is going to be a reprint.
Okay.
Because Reich, and I can't remember how many issues it was, but it was Sparkplug Comics that published this. At least 3 issues, I know. Back in 2008, around that time, 2007, 2008. And this is another biographical comic, but this is about the life of Wilhelm Reich, who worked with Sigmund Freud. And if you know anything about psychoanalytic history, you know that Reich was someone who kind of had a parting of the ways with Freud because of his emphasis on sexual energy. And so if people thought that that's all that Freud was thinking about was sex, they should read the works of Wilhelm Reich. And I think he had that concept of organe?
Yeah, organ? Is that how you say it?
I'm not sure if it's organe or organ.
Organ. I've always said organ.
Yeah. But we have the first issue. Now it says the first of 12 at $3. And so I don't know how long the original series was, or if this was something that was never finished up.
Right.
And now they've just brought it over to, and I can't tell if this is going to be alternative or one within the co-op, like Floating World or Study Group. But anyway, it's apparently going to be 12 issues.
Yeah, I gotta. That's one I'm gotta remind myself every month that I'm going to be getting.
Okay.
Because very often these series that come in the back half of the catalog, I very often forget to order. Like, for example, I ordered the first couple issues of Hillbilly by Eric Powell, and then proceeded to forget that I was ordering that regularly.
Well, also in alternative comics, and this is on the next page, issue number 4 of Sun Bakery. I mean, that's something that if you got the first couple of issues or first few issues of, don't forget to order issue number 4. We talked about issue number 1 on that Publisher Spotlight show. There's also a graphic novel, Vortex, that I'm not familiar with. William Cardini, that creator. Apparently it's a sci-fi title. But right above that is Tom Hart's She's Not Into Poetry, Mini Comics 1991 through 1996. So this collects a lot of Tom's early work.
Yeah, and that was resolicited. That it actually from a while ago, August 2015.
Wow. So is that all you wanted to mention under Alternative Comics?
Yeah. I think that's everything that is under Alternative Comics. So I go to 287 next.
Oh, yep, I do too. Arsenal Pulp Press.
Yep. And it's taken me a while to get there.
Again, scrolling through a PDF.
Yeah. Oops, and then I zoomed past it.
Which I find this interesting, given what you've said a few times on the show, that you're trying to get out of reading autobiographical comics.
Yeah, so I may not get it, but I just like to note that they're coming out, because actually one of the things that I tried to mention in the book that I wrote was that, you know, if you open up a previews catalog,
yeah,
you're going to find at least half a dozen, if not more, autobiographical comics, and this is no exception. Such a Lovely Little War, published by Arsenal Pulp. Saigon 1961 to 1963 by Marcelino Truong, David Hamel are the writers, and then Marcelino Truong is the artist as well. And this tells the story of the early years of the Vietnam War as seen through the eyes of a young boy named Marco, the son of a Vietnamese diplomat, and his French wife. The boy's father works for the South Vietnam Embassy in the United States. Then the family is called back to Saigon in 1961, where the father becomes Prime Minister Diem's personal interpreter, and so on. So I'm curious about this. Have you ever read G.B. Tran's Viet America?
No, I haven't.
Okay, because there's that covers both Tran's experience as the child of Vietnamese immigrants to the United States who emigrated during the war. He was born after, but he also goes back and tells his father and his mother's story. And his father, his grandfather, was a highly connected, and now I'm going to misremembering, but I think in North Vietnam, and his father married a French woman too. So there seem to be some parallels here between these experiences. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how this book in particular compares to Viet America.
Well, you know, when I saw this in the catalog, I thought that this is fodder for discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
In some way, you know, whether we review it on the show or do an interview, definitely would like to talk about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have anything until 296.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. On 296, we have Big Planet Retrofit Comics. Mm-hmm. Leela Corman's We All Wish for Deadly Force, and this is a collection of a lot of her short-form comics. You know, we mentioned earlier Tom Hart. Tom and Leela are husband and wife. So here we go. The team, both of them are solicited in this month's previews. And in fact, we should mention we're going to be interviewing, I think later in August, Leela about this new book. So I'm looking forward to that.
And you and I both have gotten copies of this book, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I haven't read it yet, unfortunately, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I am as well, because I really like her other work as well. Untersaken, Queen's Day, the Subway series, so she does really good work. When I was down in at the University of Florida earlier this year, I was hoping that I would get to meet her in person. I got to meet Tom, but because I got to meet Tom, I couldn't meet Leela because she had to stay home with their child.
Yeah. Okay.
One had to.
Mm-hmm.
So meeting either would have been fine, but maybe later I can have the pleasure of meeting Leela in person. So, yes, we will discuss this book when we have Leela on the show in another few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you go next?
I go just below that to Black Balloon Publishing, which is not a publisher I'm familiar with, but we have another graphic memoir that stood out to me. Amy Kurzweil's Flying Couch. And this is her debut. Tells the stories of three unforgettable women, her own coming of age as a young Jewish artist, and the narrative of her mother and her grandmother. And so I'll be curious to see that as well.
And you said I'm glad that you mentioned this. This is yet another instance of me overlooking something and not noticing it until you brought it up in our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because what is right above it, Leela Corman's We All Wish for Deadly Forest, I thought about that, noted that, and then turned the page, which, was not very careful of me. I should have looked down below. Yeah.
I almost glossed over it simply because I wasn't familiar with Black Balloon, but I think that it sounds interesting.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you made. I think my browsing habits are the same as yours in that if it's a publisher I've never heard of before, many times I won't give it the kind of attention that I probably should. Is it new? Is it something that may be for me? I just assume, okay, it's some kind of small press, and there's so many of those. But right, the solicit does sound fascinating, so that's another one I'd like to check out.
Yeah, and it's largely because I tend to be moving pretty quickly through the catalog at some points if I'm in a time crunch.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything for a while, so if
the next thing
326. So if you have anything before then, go ahead.
I don't have anything until 334.
Oh, okay. So we skip through Boom.
Which, again, Boom does great things, but it's just nothing this month that either of us wanted to highlight.
Yeah. And so on 326, under Cinebooks, is Clear Blue Tomorrows by Fabian Vellman, written by Fabian Vellman with art by Bruno Gazzotti and Ralph Meyer. And this solicit caught my eye. When a traveler from the future recounts his memories, it's a vision both frightening and touching that unrolls before us. In the future, the entire population is under a de facto dictatorship because of cerebral implants invented by one F.G. Wilson. Nolan Scott, an engineer, manages to travel back in time with the intention of changing history by encouraging Wilson's first career as a novelist. But the man who will eventually become a seemingly immortal despot turns out to be a poor writer, and it will be up to Nolan to use his own memories to be his ghostwriter. I like that idea.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but that's another one that I don't know why I overlooked this one, but I did overlook it, which is weird. I mean, I like what Cinebooks does, and I like the work of Fabian Vellman. Mm-hmm. So thank you for reminding me that I completely skipped this. It does look interesting.
Uh-huh. So do you have 328?
328, no.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention what is under Conundrum.
Okay.
On 328, which is Garbage, a graphic novel by Robin Metcalf and Matthew Reichertz. It is an architectural scale series of panels that transform a gallery into a comic book. Each page of the story pops with color off the wall, unfolding using the common tropes of comic books. Taken together, the paintings tell the story of neighbors in Halifax's North End and a mysterious couch which shows up one morning on the narrator's front curb. And so Garbage collects these paintings into a graphic novel, which I think is an interesting idea, that it is meant to be another medium, paintings in a gallery that tell a narrative in comic form, and now it's being put into that comic form. So I'll be curious to see if any of the kind of transmedial elements that would make this a more unique work, I guess, or a more experimental work would make that transition.
Mm-hmm. Well, Conundrum always does really, really good things.
Yeah.
And then solicited underneath that is a book that came out earlier this year, The Search for Charlie Butters.
Yeah.
Which is good. Mm-hmm. Because I spoke with Zach Wharton on the show.
So do you go to Dynamite?
I go to Dynamite, but I do not go to a place where you might want to go.
Oh,
if you're a Kiss fan.
No, I'm passing the kit up on the Kiss.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know. I've never been a Kiss fan. There are a lot of people out there who are Kiss fans, so I didn't even give that the time of day.
I like Kiss. I just don't care for their comics.
Oh, well.
Nor do I care for their coffee, to be honest with you.
What? They have coffee?
Well, Gene Simmons owns a coffee shop in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh, really?
Called the Kiss Coffee House, and the coffee there is terrible. But you get to walk into a building that has those four corners, the different boots of each member of Kiss. You get to listen to a lot of Kiss while you're in there. I don't think also that the coffee shop takes as much advantage of the Kiss connection as it could. The coffee cups do say that this coffee is hotter than hell, which I like. But they also sell they do sell lick it up panties. And there is a sign on the panty bin, which doesn't look very hygienic, that once you purchase the panties, you cannot return them. I don't even know if it's still in existence. It's been a few years since I've been there.
I'm kind of sorry I brought up the whole I'm not going to talk about the Kiss comic.
Okay, so anyway, do you go to 334?
Yeah. A new James Bond title. This one is written by Andy Diggle, and it's James Bond Hammerhead, #1 of 6.
Yeah, I almost feel like reading this solicit that this might as well be called James Bond Brexit. Because the solicit says Bond is assigned to hunt down and eliminate Kraken, a radical anti-capitalist who has targeted Britain's newly upgraded nuclear arsenal, but all is not as it seems. Hidden forces are plotting to rebuild the faded glory of the once mighty British Empire and retake by force what was lost. So the kind of rampant nationalism that seemed to spur on the Leave movement in the Brexit vote is something maybe that Diggle is capitalizing on here.
Yeah. And why not? Yeah, I'd like to check this out because I like what Warren Ellis is doing with James Bond.
Yeah, and I think Andy Diggle is a good writer to follow up.
Perfect writer to follow up on this.
Mm-hmm. And Warren Ellis's run on James Bond is continuing too.
Mm-hmm. Right, and in fact, issue number 11 is solicited on that next page.
Yeah, and so this story arc, Eidolon, ends with issue 12, and I don't know if Ellis is going to continue on the series or not, but I've liked what he's done so far.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting in that I think Dynamite doesn't get much attention from us on a month-by-month basis. Every now and again we'll mention something, but this time around there are 3 things, for me at least, worth mentioning, not counting Kiss, of course. So there's the James Bond Hammerhead #1, but then on page 338 is issue #1 of Betty Boop. And this is written by Roger Langridge with art by Giselle Legace. And so what Langridge is doing here is he's taking the classic Betty Boop character and also some other Fleischer Brother characters as characters. For instance, there's Coco the Clown and what is Bimbo? It's like a cat dog thing.
Yeah.
So here we have this new series. I'm wondering what this will be like. My assumption is that this is going to be kind of an all-age title, I would assume, given what Langridge has done in the past. Although, with the Betty Boop character, you can get quite sexy.
Yeah. I wonder if, like in the old Betty Boop cartoons, the artists would draw one frame of Betty Boop naked in every cartoon. I don't know if this book will do something similar. I kind of hope not, but I was going to pass this by as another kind of licensed property that I don't have a lot of investment in, but then seeing Roger Langridge's name attached to it made me, stop and pause, and I'll probably get at least his first issue because I like Roger Langridge's writing a lot.
Right. And we have Howard Chaykin with the cover.
Yeah, that's
a
weird.
Nice cover. Yeah.
It looks like it's a variation on another Howard Chaykin cover, but I cannot think of it offhand, or maybe it's a variation on he's doing a riff on something else.
Well, Chaykin makes Betty Boop look sexier than she is, which, that's no surprise there with Chaykin making someone look sexy. But to me, the thing that stands out about that cover is he makes Coco much creepier than he normally is.
Yeah, because the signature has Chaykin after, and then it has another symbol that I don't recognize.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. And then I go to 347.
Yes, I do as well. And this is something that we have discussed on the show before, or at least the first issue of this series, Will Eisner's The Spirit. So now we have collected in a hardcover edition, Volume 1, Will Eisner's The Spirit Returns.
Yeah, I kind of fell off this series with the 6th issue, not because I didn't like it, but because it just kept forgetting to buy it. Mm-hmm. And also, one of the other things that drove me nuts with this series, because I was buying the individual issues at a comic book store, is the number of variant covers that there were made me not like I normally figure out like what issue I need because I don't recognize the cover.
Right.
But there were so many different covers for each issue that I was like, well, I maybe already have this issue and I don't know it. So anyway, that got frustrating. So I stopped buying it. So I will likely get this. This looks like a nice collection. And it collects all 12 issues. Plus it has a foreword by Matt Wagner, who wrote the series, and an afterword by Paul Levitz, who wrote the recent biography of Will Eisner. So.
That's right. That again, Abrams' book.
Yeah, which I'm cited in.
Yes. I know. This is one. I'm like you. I quit reading it in single issues for different reasons, not because of the multi covers. Although Dynamite is in some ways kind of notorious about the multiple covers, the variant covers. It's just a matter of time. But I know that I really liked what I had been reading, and right after we reviewed issue number 1. Shakti got in touch with us and said that he very much appreciated our episode. He went back to listen to other episodes of the Comics Alternative, and so it was our review of his book that turned him onto our podcast.
Okay. Yep.
And that's all that I have in Dynamite, but it's more than I usually have in Dynamite.
Right.
I don't have anything noted until we get to Drawn and Quarterly.
Yeah, just before Drawn and Quarterly on page 362 is Dover Publications, which, again, in the kind of efforts Dover Publications has had in recent year or so, is to reprint kind of long-lost comics. And in we've got 2 examples here. Georgie, The Story of a Man, His Dog, and a Pin by R.O. Bleckman. And underneath that, World Without End, The Complete Collection by Jamie Delano and John Higgins. Are you familiar with either of these?
With either the creators of World Without End or either of those books?
Either of those books, yeah.
I'm not familiar with the books. Now, I know that with Bleckman, there was something from him or on him from Fantagraphics not too long ago. Yeah.
I don't know Georgie, but I did read World Without End when it was originally published by DC Comics back in the 80s, I guess, and it was kind of one of those pre-Vertigo series. It wasn't a Vertigo. It looks like it should have been a Vertigo title, but it was before Vertigo existed.
It was Vertigo before Vertigo was cool.
Yeah, and it was. I think it was part of that kind of post-Watchmen era of DC Comics where they were bringing in British writers like Jamie Delano and John Higgins, who was actually the colorist on Watchmen, and letting them go nuts in hopes of finding the next Watchmen. So this has been long out of print. I don't even know if DC collected it. I think they just released it as a 6-issue miniseries and was done with it.
Yeah, well, we've noted many times how Dover is bringing back into print things that had been published through other publishers and several DCs, and this is another one. Yeah,
and now I'm remiss with not having the names for this here, but I think there was an announcement at San Diego or around San Diego that the editor at Dover who's been responsible for these reprints is actually moving to IDW and getting his own imprint there.
Yes, exactly. So I would assume that the things that we've been seeing over the past year or two from Dover, we will now see in IDW under this imprint. So I guess it would be something, akin to Yo Books or the American Library of Cartoons.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I like this idea of taking stuff from that period in which we had a lot of publishers around, and even DC and Marvel were publishing some very interesting things that disappeared. They either never got collected or they've gone long out of print for decades. So this is a nice historical activity, and I'm looking forward to see what IDW does.
Right.
But we got Drawn and Quarterly. There's several things there.
Right. And the 3 new titles, I think all 3 are worth mentioning. There's a new Anders Nilsson book. This is A Walk in Eden. We have another Shigeru Mizuki Kitaro book. This is Kitaro Meets Nurarihyon. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And then we have Sarah Glidden, Rolling Blackouts, Dispatches from Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. And then underneath that, and onto the next page, you have resolicits, as they always do. But these are the 3 new books.
Yeah, now recently, and this was on a previous episode that I wasn't on, Drawn and Quarterly has republished Sarah Glidden's How to Understand Israel in 60 Days or Less, another book which was originally published by Vertigo.
Right.
And so they've obviously now brought Sarah Glidden into the Drawn and Quarterly family, which is great.
Yeah. And in fact, now that you mention this, this is kind of a follow-up to that discussion that we had, and I think it was last month that we were wondering, if Drawn and Quarterly is bringing back into print books that may have been published elsewhere, kind of anticipation of them getting the artist now, then what would that have meant to Ben Catcher? Because remember, they're reprinting his cheap novelties.
Right.
Okay, I emailed Ben soon after that episode went up, or we recorded the episode, and asked him if that was the case. And he said, well, he does have what should be 2 books coming out in 2017, but neither of them through Drawn and Quarterly. So our theory didn't hold.
Yeah. Now, didn't Drawn and Quarterly also take on Blankets recently? Or did Blankets go somewhere else from Drawn and Quarterly?
Blankets was originally Top Shelf.
Yeah. So Drawn and Quarterly now publishes Blankets. So I wonder if we'll see Craig Thompson coming from in this. Though you've already pointed out your theory isn't isn't going to hold up.
Yeah, or at least with Ben Catcher.
Yeah. Now Ben Catcher's going to be at a conference that I'm going to be going to in October.
That's the one you were telling me about.
The Comics Crossroads
in Columbia,
and there's actually going to be a conversation with Ben Catcher and Seth that I'm really looking forward to.
Oh God, tape it so I can hear that. That would be great.
Actually, I think it says that this cannot be recorded. Because there's several sessions there that are meant to be like, we're closing the doors, nobody's allowed to record this, so everybody can speak their minds.
Wow. Well, I wish I could be there for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, all three of these new books I think are definitely worth checking out. Now, I had contacted Sarah Glidden a couple of months ago to ask about an interview on the Comics Alternative, which she is interested in, but she said, let's get closer to the book's publication date, and then we'll do that. So we hope that she will not change her mind, that we will get her on the show, because that would be good.
Yep.
Anything else in Drawn In Quarterly? You want to mention something else about the resolicits?
No, I just jumped to Fantagraphics next.
Well, right before Fantagraphics, that page before that, this is 367. This is under Fanfare Ponent Mon. This is A Distant Neighborhood Complete Collection, and this is by Jiro Taniguchi. And this is something I know, I'm pretty sure that Shane and I are going to be discussing this on an upcoming episode of our monthly manga series.
Good.
But A Distant Neighborhood had been published in different volumes, at least in English. So now we're going to get everything in one book. So I'm really looking forward to this. And this is something that I think was supposed to come out last year, or maybe very early this year, but I contacted the publisher. They were having some difficulties, some unexpected difficulties. But it's finally out, and I'm glad. I'm looking forward to this. So that's, I recommend looking at that. It's on page, again, 367 under Fanfare Ponent Mon. And then Fantagraphics.
Yeah. There's a lot in the, at least in the second page for me, of the Fantagraphics solicits on page 369.
Yeah, same here. I mean, the Peanut stuff and the Uncle Scrooge stuff, that's all good as well. But yeah, I was highlighting the material on that second page, 369.
Mm-hmm. Now you've got, you're a Jim Woodring fan, right? So his reprint of his Weathercraft that was originally published about 6 years ago, and I guess this was Woodring's, it says, first full-length graphic novel, featuring the character Manhog. And then on the other column, Stephen Wiseman's Looking for America's Dog. I like the premise of this book that Joe Biden has accidentally let the first dog escape from the White House, and so teenagers Sasha and Malia must navigate a strange and hostile world in search of their lost dog. Okay, that sounds great. And this is a follow-up, I guess, to Weissman's Barack Hussein Obama.
Did you read that?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either. I mean, I've read some other Weissman stuff, but not Barack Hussein Obama. So I'd like to go back and look at that and then read Looking for America's Dog.
Yeah.
And then underneath that, we have another in Fantagraphics EC series. This is Voodoo Vengeance and Other Stories, Johnny Craig, Al Feldstein. So that's been going on. God, it's how long has it been? 5 years? Mm-hmm. I think that they've had this black and white EC series going on.
Yeah, Artist's Library, and then below that is a new book by Derek Van Giesen, Enough Astronaut Blood to Last the Winter, which is a great title. And we had Van Giesen on the show when for his series Eel Mansions, which came out from Uncivilized Books. So I'm glad to see him coming out with a new book, this time from Fantagraphics. Right.
Now this is, it says it's part fine art book, part travelogue. So this is going to be not just, straight out comics, but different things. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. But I seem to remember this being solicited in an earlier issue of Previews.
It doesn't say resolicited, so I'm not sure.
Because, or maybe I'm thinking of a reference that I saw somewhere to something by Derek Van Giesen coming out through Fantagraphics. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
I don't know. But Eel Mansions, I keep rereading that book. I really like that series, so I'm looking forward to anything that he puts out.
And also on that page, you have something that we've been waiting for, another Drew Friedman book, and this is more Heroes of the Comics. This follows up on his book that came out several years ago, Heroes of the Comics. And the reason why I said that Andy and I have really been looking forward to another Drew Friedman book is, and we said this last year, that especially after hearing him a couple of times at least on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast, that we've got to get Drew Friedman on the show. When's he going to come out with something new?
Right.
And now this is new, and we have gotten in touch with him, and he's up for it. So
great.
I guess in October we will have him on the show. He's going to be at SPX, in fact. But he said, why don't you guys interview me there? And I said, well, my colleague is not going to be going. I said, I'll meet you, but then we can do it right after. And so he's up for that.
That's great. Yeah. And he was also on WTF.
That's right. Yeah.
In the episode that also had Mick Jagger on it. But
Marin gets a good number of comics artists on there.
Yeah. and I love it when Friedman shows up on this. He's on my bucket list of people I want to interview.
Yeah, well, we will in a couple of months. But with this caveat, I told him this on Facebook, that we would have to we promised to rewatch Skidoo before the interview.
Yeah, I just found my copy, so
yeah.
I mentioned I moved in a new house. I'm setting up in my room a little kind of screening area so that I can watch things like Skidoo without bothering anybody in the rest of the house.
Okay. This is going to sound weird to me or to you, but I swear when I was listening to it was one of Sam Cedars' The Majority Report. It was one of those episodes from this past week, and I'm listening to it, I think, the day after it went up, and he was at the Democratic National Convention. And so he was talking with someone, and as he was talking with someone, and this is before all the primetime stuff was going on, there was music in the background that was being played in the hall. I swear to you, I sensed the Skidoo theme. Mm-hmm. No lyrics, but it had. I'm sure it wasn't the theme, but it had the same sound or a very similar sound to Skidoo. And so after listening to that, and I was in the car the other day when I heard that, I came back home and I got out my Skidoo soundtrack just to listen to it, and I think that's something very similar to what I heard.
Well,
so a Skidoo mystery.
Yeah, we didn't see anything like the way that when Trump used "We Are the Champions" and the surviving members of Queen put out a statement saying stop using our music. We never heard anything from I don't know, whoever owns the rights to the music of Skidoo, the Harry Nilsson estate.
Yeah.
or the Carol Channing estate saying that the Democrats stop using this music. So I doubt they would, but anyway. Yeah, so that's exciting, and I go to First Second on the next page,
right?
And pretty much everything on the First Second page is something to talk about. I'm very glad. I know it's been announced for a while that they were going to reprint Jason Shiga's Demon, and so the first volume of that, 176 pages, is coming out.
Or you said reprint. I mean, this is the first time outside of the individual comics that Shiga's puts out on his own that this has been published.
Yeah, so they're reprinting Shiga's original comics. Yes.
Right. But okay, so this now Demon was a webcomic.
Right.
And he would put out individual issues that he would sell his own. But then it was announced earlier this year that First Second would be publishing now all of Demon. And I don't even know if I've told you this, but we actually got – well, actually not we. Paul, the editor of our blog, got in touch with Jason Shiga and asked if he would be interested in an interview. And I don't know if Paul meant – for the blog or what, or if he made this clear, but apparently Shiga was all on board and just assumed it was for the podcast. And so then Paul got in touch with me and mentioned that, and I said, hey, you're the one who found him, let's do the interview as long if you want to be a part of it. And so we've loosely made plans to have Shiga on the show when around the pub date of this book. So
great.
So that should be fun.
I love that book, and I'm so glad it's coming out. Even if it's coming out in multiple volumes, I'm probably the next time I teach a superhero comics class, I am going to include it, and then I'm gonna hear from parents.
Oh, you definitely will. Yeah, this is a fun comic. Now I have to say I have not lately over the past 2 or 3 months finished up the webcomic, but for a while it was one that I would read on a regular basis. Because many of the webcomics that we discuss on the monthly show, the vast majority of them I won't continue to follow, but some of them I will semi-regularly. Demon was one of those, and I think Demon was one of those webcomics that we reviewed on the very first webcomics episode.
Yes, it was.
But yeah, I'm really excited about this being a new book from First Second. And then the one under that, it's another in First Second's Science Comic series. This is Volcanoes.
Yeah, and it's by John Chad. I don't know if you're familiar with John Chad.
Yeah.
I have one of his books on geology that's a really neat book. It's formatted, it's very narrow and long, but you read it vertically, so it's like you're going down into the earth as you're reading it. It's a really neat experiment. I wish I could remember what the name of that is. I don't have it handy. And then Volcanoes is right up his alley.
Right. And this whole science comic series, I think, is really exciting. One of the more exciting things coming out of First Second over the past year. I mean, basically almost anything that comes from First Second seems to be exciting, but I think especially science comics because of the potential. And I can't say it now. I can tell you off the air, but I know of someone that both of us knows who's going to be doing a book in the science comic series.
Great.
But I can't say it now.
Great.
Because we're on record.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something to look forward to, as well as the book that's solicited underneath it, and this is Tetris, The Games People Play by Box Brown.
Yeah, I am. This one I want to cover on the show.
Maybe we can interview him.
The story behind the creation of Tetris in 1984 by Alexei Pajitnov while working in the Soviet Union. So from what I've heard, the story behind the making of Tetris is fascinating on its own. So I'll be curious to see that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, we either review this or have him on the show. Which would be great. I mean, he's a really nice guy. I met him briefly last year at SPX, and he and Jared at Retrofit Big Planet do keep us in the comics. They keep us in the loop, so we should have Box on the show.
Yeah, and I've talked to him at Heroes Con, and he's a great guy, and he's also turned people on to us. Other creators who said, you should get in touch with the Comics Alternative guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me feel good.
Yep.
Okay. I go next to 381 Hill and Wang. Do you have anything before that?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, this is, again, under Hill and Wang, an adaptation of Shirley Jackson's classic short story, The Lottery. So this has been, of course, written by Shirley Jackson. Miles Hyman, I guess, is the one who's adapting this, and also does the art. And in fact, Miles Hyman was the artist on a book that we discussed last week.
Yeah, The Black Dahlia.
Yes.
And he's also Shirley Jackson's grandson.
There you go.
So, that's interesting on its own. Yeah.
I know a lot of people, in literature classes teach the lottery. Mm-hmm. So sure. One thing you could do now, maybe in addition to or instead of the short story, include this graphic novel.
Yeah, and it says in the solicit that Hyman brings kind of his noirish style to this story, which is, I think, an interesting approach to the lottery, because I always when I teach that story like a lot of people do, I always imagine it taking place in a kind of bright, sunny day community with lots of bright colors that kind of contrast the underlying darkness of the event. But I'll be curious to see what Hyman's style is on that. So I go to 384.
Yes, 384. There are a couple things there. One really that stands out.
Yeah, so the next volume of the Best American Comics is coming out with guest editor this time Roz Chast. So I'll be. We always talk about that volume every year, so I'll be curious to see what makes it this time.
Yeah, so we'll definitely talk about this later in the year. And I'm curious to see what different sensibility, perhaps, that Chast brings to the editorship of this particular volume, because and we've talked about this on the show before. Different volume editors bring a different twist or different sensibilities or a different perspective. And so since, Chast's background isn't in comic books, I'd be curious to see what she includes in this one.
Yep.
So that's something to look forward to. But also the book that is solicited underneath, this is under Humanoids, it is El Niño. And I can't even. I have my PDF is small. If I can't even read the names. Christian Parasyte and Boro Pavlovic is the artist. Parasyte is the writer. So this story looks like something worth pursuing, and I know that Edward and I have discussed this as a possibility for our Eurocomic series.
Great. Yeah, Humanoids puts out good stuff for that series. Really
good books. Good stories, good packaging, just good all the way around.
Okay.
Where do you go after Humanoids?
I go to NBM on page 407, so if you have anything before then.
Okay. On 386, this is under Insight Comics, and I'm not familiar with Insight Comics. This is the Baker Street 4 Volume 1 graphic novel written by Oliver Legrand and also J.B. Dion with art by David Itan. If I'm reading this correctly, again, the PDF is kind of sketchy, the one that I'm looking at. This is looking at the Baker Street irregular legend. And the reason I pointed this out, I don't think I'll get this, but I couldn't help but think of Langridge's and Andy Hirsch's Baker Street Peculiars, if for no other reason, in that the silhouette we see on the cover of this book, the Baker Street 4, the first volume, is very reminiscent of what we saw with the Baker Street Peculiars. However, if I'm not mistaken, I think I looked this up earlier, this is a book that appeared in French, and now it's being translated into English. And so, I wonder in what Langridge was doing with the Baker Street Peculiars, which is a very different take. If you've read the first issue, you know that. Have you read any of the Baker Street? Okay. It goes into a very different direction than where this book is going. But just the cover reminds me of just a similar link here, it's a visual link. So if you like Sherlock Holmes and young kids, then this is another title to gravitate toward.
Okay.
And then I don't have anything until 398.
Yeah, go ahead, because I don't have anything until 407.
Okay, 407. Okay, so in 398, and this is in the Kodansha section. This is Neo Parasyte. It's by various creators. This is a shoujo horror anthology. Again, just in time for the holidays, so that's something to look forward to. And then after that, I go to NBM.
Okay. And, you mentioned Miles Hyman being a callback to a recent episode that we just did under NBM. We also get another callback to that episode, which is Rick Geary's adaptation, or Rick Geary's, I guess, telling of the Black Dahlia mystery. Not an adaptation of James Ellroy's novel, but his own take in the Treasury of 20th Century Murder.
Right. This would have been cool to read alongside the recent adaptation that we discussed last week, but the timing wasn't there. But we should definitely consider discussing it on the show.
Yep.
I really enjoy Geary's Murder Treasury editions. In fact, I just last week, Zoe, my daughter, wanted something to read, and she wanted a mystery, a crime story, which I don't think she's ever asked me for before. But at the same time, she had said something to lead me to think of real life mysteries, real life crimes. And so I immediately thought of Geary's series, the Treasury of Murders. And I had a volume of the Victorian murder treasury. And so I gave it to her to read, and she fell in love with it.
Great.
So Rick Geary is something that my whole family enjoys.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I am interested to see what he does with the actual story of the Black Dahlia.
Yeah. I hope he solves it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, on the next page, there are a couple of things that I have as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Under Nobrow Press, and I really don't know anything about this outside of this solicit, and I think I've seen it also in some publicity from Nobrow that we've gotten. This is How to Survive in the North by Luke Healy. So I've liked a lot of other things that Nobrow does, so I would be willing to check this out. It says, weaving together the true life historical expeditions of Ada Blackjack and Robert Bartlett with a contemporary fictional story, How to Survive in the North is a unique and visual narrative journey that shows the strengths it takes to survive in the harshest conditions, whether that be struggling for survival in the Arctic in the 1900s or surviving a midlife crisis in the present day. So 192 pages there. And then also on that page under Odod Books, Uncivilized Books, and Odod is, I guess, the children's imprint of Uncivilized, is Musne, Volume 2. And I mentioned this because the other month, Andy and Gwen on the Young Reader series discussed the first volume of Musne.
I go to 410 under Oni.
Yes.
Next. And this is a new series from Oni called Angel City, written by Janet Harvey, art by Megan Levins, who is also credited as the artist on Spell on Wheels, which we just talked about earlier in the volume, which we talked about 3 days ago when this episode began. Anyway, here's yet another noir story in comics, but this time we have a female protagonist, Dolores Dare, who previous Hollywood hopeful and current enforcer for the Volante mob. When her best friend turns up dead in a dumpster behind a Chinese theater, Dolores starts her own investigation of the April Fool's killer. As she gets closer to the truth, the studios, the corrupt homicide division, and even her own gangland contacts work to cover up the scandal. This feels like it's a kind of combination of, what James Ellroy does and the type of thing we saw in like The Fade Out by Brubaker Phillips.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious to see this variation on the noir detective story. Again, this time with a female protagonist and done by female creators.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this too. And in fact, this is one of several of new crime/noir comics that we've either mentioned or we will mention in this episode.
Yeah, I think that this sets up possibly us doing a crime-themed episode in October.
Yeah. Last week's episode, all three of those titles were crime-based, but it was, I think, about 3 years ago that we did a 2-part crime noir special theme show.
Yeah.
And with everything that seems to be coming out soon that's crime-related, we definitely have enough to talk about.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to as well. And after that, I go to 417, unless you have something else in Oni.
Well, yeah, and 415, the first volume of Heartthrob by Christopher Sabella and Robert Wilson IV comes out. And what I wanted to mention about this is that it's priced at $9.99 for this for first volume.
Yes.
And so that's a good series, so that's worth picking up. And then on the next page is Anthony Johnston and Stephen Perkins' The Coldest Winter, which is a follow-up to these creators' The Coldest City, which is actually coming out as a movie, so this timing is good for a sequel. And Anthony Johnston, I like. This is a spy story set in the Cold War era, and I like he does good spy stuff. He did some things within the Queen and Country franchise, for example,
right?
For Greg Rucka. So I'm curious about that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I noted that, at least mentally, but for some reason I don't have it written down in the notes that I'm reading from.
And I said sequel. It's actually a prequel to The Coldest City. But yeah, so you can check that out. But you go to the next page, right? Right.
And this is something that we have discussed, or at least partly discussed in the past, but now everything is collected. This is on page 417, Pantheon Books, Last Look by Charles Burns. So basically this collects those 3 books that were part of the trilogy, X'd Out, The Hive, and Sugar Skull, into one volume. Now, we discussed both The Hive and Sugar Skull when those came out. We didn't discuss X'd Out. I think X'd Out came out that first year that we started the podcast. I noted it as one of my favorites of 2012, but I think it came out before we started the podcast. And, if you like everything in one complete volume, or if, shame on you, you haven't been exposed to any of these stories, then now you have the entire run, all the trilogy in this one book, Last Look, from Pantheon.
I think when we talked about Sugar Skull 2, we were wondering whether the trilogy would be collected in a separate volume. So that'll be curious. That's coming out in October, and Burns is going to be at CXC in Columbus as well. So I may see if they have copies of that book then.
Yeah. So where do you go after?
I go to SelfMadeHero on 424.
Yeah, SelfMadeHero 424. I go the same way, but just want to mention in passing, on page 421, we have more PS art books, which are all really worth checking out. And our dedicated listener, Rainer Koshnik, mentions every now and again the great books put out through PS art books. So check those out on 421. But then we go to 424.
Yeah, and so SelfMadeHero has 2 books. Their new volume in their Art Masters series. This one on Salvador Dali, with written and drawn by Edmund Badoin. Okay, we're ruining everything.
Everything French we're ruining. Yeah. So
I'm curious to see how the comic art style deals with Dali's surrealism. And then next to that is The Return of the Honey Buzzard by Amy de Jong.
Yeah, and you know, I like what Self-Made Heroes does with the Art Master series, but I'm really intrigued by the return of Honey Buzzard. I mean, the solicit sounds really good.
Yep.
It says Simon, a bookseller, has hit hard times. The financial crisis has struck and sales have slumped. His store looks set to... Okay, I got to make this bigger. I'm looking at small text here. Mm-hmm. Set to close, and he has increasingly withdrawn. Returning from his storage facility in the woods, he stops at an isolated railroad crossing. There, he witnesses a suicide. Withdrawing deeper into himself, Simon is haunted by memories from his past, memories repressed, from a time he'd prefer to forget. It is only by chance that he meets Regina, a young girl who begins to provide the comfort and support he needs. But who is Regina? And can she help him come to terms with the loss of a childhood friend? Now, see, one of the things I appreciate about this is, at least from the solicit here, this is a realistic story, right? So it's not anything that begins real but then has some kind of genre twist, horror or otherwise.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this title.
Yep.
And after Self-Made Hero?
I go to Sunday Press on 428.
Okay.
Sunday Press, which puts out really great reprints of comic strips, is doing a Dick Tracy book, Colorful Cases of the 1930s, and this is going to be a massive book, and it's got 4 complete stories from the 1930s from the Dick Tracy Sunday comics. And it's 11 by 15, so it's again one of those giant Sunday Press books for $75.
Yeah, and they do good books, good quality, kind of expensive, but
yeah. And I love those. I love those early Dick Tracy stories. And then I think the last thing I have is in Titan. So
yeah, I have a couple things in Titan, and the actual solicits are on 456 and 457. Is that what you were wanting to mention?
I don't know. I didn't write the page numbers down because it's so hard to figure out.
Yeah, the Titan section.
The Titan section. So I'm just sticking with their kind of unpaginated section here.
The ads.
And if this is what you're talking about, is the new, I guess, line of comics within Titan for hard case crime.
Right.
Now, I'm a big fan of the hard case crime books. Have you read any of them?
No, but I know that Titan has been publishing them for the past several years. They have that line of books now.
Right.
And some of these are even solicited here in the catalog, as they've done in the past.
Yeah. But I feel like this is the first time I've seen this number of their books in the catalog. I know in the past they've, for example, solicited like when Max Allan Collins did a mystery called Seduction of the Innocent, which took place in the comics industry in the 1950s.
Right.
And I remember seeing that solicited. But this is going to be a series of comics written by creators who have either involved in hard case crime or known within the genre.
Right.
The first one being Peepland, written by Krista Faust and Gary Phillips, with art by Andrea Camerini. And it's referred to as semi-autobiographical because Krista Faust is a writer who has had experience in the adult entertainment industry, and I don't know if you're familiar with any of her work.
No, I haven't read it, but I know of her.
Yeah, and so her 2 books for hard case crime, Money Shot and Chokehold, are really good. They're among the ones I like the most. And so if anyone's interested in kind of checking out what hard case crime is like, those 2 books are good, are worth checking out. So I'm excited about this whole idea of Titan putting out a line of comics to go along with the prose fiction paperbacks that they're doing.
Right, yeah. And that other one, Trigger Man, by Walter Hill. I mean, that's another one. And we should mention that these are not adaptations of prose works now into comic form, but along with the hard crime series that now Titan is putting out, they have this, maybe it's a new line. I would hope that in the months to come we will see more of these hard crime comics coming out from them. Okay, you may have heard, listener, a little edit there, and that was because we had a little technical problem with one of our microphones.
Yeah, my headset and microphone ran out of juice, which is what will happen when you do a 6-hour episode.
Yeah, this is a long episode. So Andy is using his built-in computer mic, so that's why he sounds a little different, a little more hollow. But we were actually about to wrap everything up. I know those were the two things in Titan Comics that I wanted to mention, Peepland #1 and Triggerman #1. Andy, did you have anything else in this month's previews?
No, that was it. But I would like to say that I do hope that we can, that we can get a hold of these first issues of the hard case crime books and talk about them on the show, because I'm pretty excited about that line.
Yeah, I am too. So that's definitely just, again, other examples of new crime noir coming out that we can discuss on the podcast, maybe for a special episode. Now, the only other thing I had in this month's previews is in the VIZ Media section. And, in addition to some new volumes of series that I really like Tokyo Ghoul has Volume 9 coming out. This is on page 481. Volume 12 of Assassination Classroom on page 482. We have now a new book from the creative team that brought us Death Note and Bakuman, Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata's Platinum End. So that is something that I'm looking forward to, and who knows, that may be something that Shay and I discuss on the monthly manga series. Other than that, though, that is all I have for the August previews. You too, Andy?
Yep, I'm done too.
Okay. Well, I know your mic's done. But yeah, you're right. This was a long episode. There was a lot of comics for us to mention and highlight. And you can find probably the vast majority, if not all of them, at really good discounts at the website of our sponsor, which is Discount Comic Book Service. Be sure to go to dcbservice.com, and there you're going to find some great specials for the month of August. And after you do get your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you think about our look through the August Previews catalog. If you go to the website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message from the comfort of your own computer or mobile device through SpeakPipe, which is really easy, simple to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are two guys at comicsalternative.com, or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we also have our Twitter feed where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to the blog. Check out Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us other places in social media such as Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. You can listen to the show on Spotify, and if you're an Android user, on Google Play Music. But as always, you can listen to every single one of our podcast episodes, as well as read the reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog by going to our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. All the ways to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing.
That's right. And we do like to hear from you. And we will be back next week with review episode number 200.
Wow. Okay.
Another occasion to celebrate. Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.